play basketball.
3,000! History with an exclamation!
Anthony for three. Bang! That one goes down, and the game is tied. Rockies are champions of baseball.
So, yesterday, the Knicks played the Dallas Mavericks at home at the Garden on MLK Day. And the game was over, I don't know, a couple minutes in. I was excited. I usually love MLK Day games. It's just a fun... I love watching it. I love hearing Clyde's monologue in the pregame, and Breen gives him some time at the top of the game. It's just a good day to hear the different stories and perspectives from certain players giving their opinions. I love that stuff. It's a beautiful day for Knicks basketball. It's just become a good tradition. It's a positive tradition. So I was excited. You know, I was getting ready to watch. I'm home, and it's 5 p.m. It's a different time, but, you know, getting the notes set up, getting the podcast set up, the software, and I was all ready to take notes on the game as I usually do. And about halfway through that first quarter, a couple minutes in, I put down the notepad. I said, fuck it, because this is not going to be a game I can tell where I discuss X's and O's. And I decided not to record an episode. We don't miss a ton of games here on the show, but when it gets to a point like it's at right now, it's really difficult to come on here and just talk basketball, because it would be almost ignoring the elephant in the room, and that is that this Knicks team has much bigger off the court problems. Something in the locker room, you know. It's obvious that this Karl Towns, Mike Brown situation is at the helm of it. Those two don't like each other. Let's just be blunt. They don't get along as player and coach. And so I just didn't really feel like talking about the game. The problem with me, I guess, as a sports fan, and this goes for both baseball too and basketball, I'm not good with outside the court stuff, off the field stuff. Like, if we're talking about front office stuff, organizational drama, financial stuff, anything that's not diving into the game itself and the X's and O's and the fundamentals of that sport, I'm not good at, and I've noticed that it's my weakness. So I didn't cover that game. But I took a day. My head is cooler. It is January 20th, Tuesday night now. Earlier today, we talked Yankees. We released an episode about Cody Bellinger, and Jason Dominguez was the topic of that episode. But it's the next night, and I am in a better spot mentally. That doesn't mean this Knicks team is. But I am such a junkie for Knicks basketball that I wanted to get something out. And I feel like at the end of the day, the Knicks, as many off-court issues as they've got going on right now, they still have to get back on that horse and ride. You still have to play the game of basketball. And so we are going to discuss hoops in this show. And for anybody who is tuning in and listening or watching, I do appreciate that. Thank you very much. But we're going to talk hoops, and we're going to talk about a specific problem that I have considered a problem now going on 2 years. You've obviously heard me talk about it plenty this season, last season, even in seasons in the past without Towns. But that is the problem that we've been discussing regarding the starting lineup. Right? That is the problem of the whole Josh Hart playing with Brunson, Mikal, OG, and Cat versus what it looks like when it's Deuce playing with those same guys. And as I've come on here time and time again and made my case for starting Deuce McBride, we're going to do that again and talk about why the Knicks should start to lean that way now. And as I've also done before, I want to preface, because I the internet is an interesting place where sometimes people can be over emotional and they take things the wrong way. So let's start by prefacing in saying that I love Josh Hart. I think Josh Hart is great. I've absolutely loved that deal from the start. I mean, the amount of times, and I'm not bullshitting, that I go back and look at that video where Brunson finds out that Josh Hart was traded to the Knicks. I do that at least, I want to say, a couple times a month. Like, I do it a lot. It's just always fun to go back and watch that. I love Hart. I also think there is a point where, as much as a certain player can be a positive impact, overdoing it can turn it into a negative. Like with everything in life, there always needs to be a middle ground. Like, right? Like with a fat kid eating food, got to find a middle ground. With, a hard left or right political person, got to find the middle. There's always a middle ground to be found. And I feel like the Knicks have not found that middle ground despite the head coaching change. And we'll talk about all of this in this episode of BD4. So stick around, please. Here in episode 975 of the podcast, we're going to talk some New York Knicks basketball and what can get this team back on track. Stay with us. Be back after a break.
Quick break here, guys. Stay connected with BD4 on social media. Follow us on Instagram and X at BD4Pod, and find us on Facebook by searching BD4. Don't miss out. Join the conversation.
Okay. Welcome back to the show, everybody. I do appreciate you listening or watching, however you're tuning in. We're going to talk. I've advocated for the Knicks to start Deuce McBride for a while. And the primary reasons, let's start with the offensive reasons to start him, because I want to make this clear for those who maybe don't know the details of this team. When they're in the half court and we talk about all the X's and O's, I realize that maybe there are more casual fans that sometimes tune into this show. Who am I kidding? Nobody listens to it, but just in case there are. So when you play Deuce McBride with that first unit, Brunson, Cat, Mikhail, OG, because of his ability to shoot and him being next to four other guys who can shoot, but Deuce's ability to shoot opens up the Brunson Cat two-man action, and it opens up the floor for other Knicks because there is nowhere to hide the big, who's usually the worst perimeter defender, since everyone on the floor can shoot. So what this does is it creates space on drives, with the defense now forced to stay home on the perimeter, and if they do send help on drive, they get punished on the skip or on the kick. It puts the big back on Cat, though. And Cat, when he has the big, can attack him downhill in space. And he is very elite at doing that because of his unique combination of mobility and strength as a big man in this league. He dominates centers. Brunson can isolate the big in space in these lineups because he calls Cat in to screen pick and roll. Now Brunson gets the big switch, and he's very elite at doing that in one-on-one and scoring on bigs. We've seen it time and time again. He's a drop coverage killer. Cat, if he's in pick and roll with Brunson and Cat starts with the big on him, you run pick and roll with Brunson. Now he's got the small, and he can either post the small or shoot over the small when he gets that switch off the Brunson Cat pick and roll. Cat will get a bigger three-point window in these lineups because the big's on him. If the big is in a drop, that means the defense decides to not switch it. If they don't want the Knicks attacking those matchups, they're not going to switch it. And then Cat gets the big and drop, and there's your pick and pop open three. If the defense decides to double the pick and roll, now Cat's open on the pop. The ball just moves a lot more this way too, because if Josh Hart's on the floor and Deuce is not, most of the time that big is going to be on Josh Hart. So one of the ways that you counter that is you use the Brunson Hart pick and roll. And then that ends up ignoring Cat. Cat's hidden on the dunker. He's on the short corner. The ball movement just stops if you keep spamming that pick and roll. So all of those good things that we just touched on, that's all capable of happening if the Knicks are in their 5-out lineups with 5 shooters and Deuce is one of those guys because of the gravity that he has. Deuce can shoot. Mikal can shoot. OG can shoot. Brunson can shoot. Cat can shoot. You can't guard that because of their ability off the ball just changes the way the defense plays you. It allows the Knicks to actually go to the Brunson Cat pick and roll or any kind of Brunson Cat action a lot more. It's not a coincidence that the Brunson Cat 2-man game has tapered off in frequency lately, and this has been at the same time where Hart cross matches are happening more and more too. Defensively, it puts Deuce McBride as your primary point of attack defender. Deuce is far and away the best player on this roster at navigating ball screens and pick and roll. He gets skinny. He gets over the top of them very well. Mikal Bridges is your worst player at doing that. Deuce would now be the primary defender. He's at the point of attack. He's taking care of those ball screens and pick and roll. Brunson, who gets hunted enough as is still going to be on the floor, but a combination defensively of Brunson and Deuce is much better than a combination defensively of Brunson Mikal. Not to mention Cat's also out there with them. So just putting one guy in there at the point of attack makes it so much better. But to go back to the offensive stuff for a second, when Josh Hart is with the first unit, the Knicks have to do so much to make it work when they play an actual contender who has the personnel to cross-match and switch on effectively. They have to do so much to make it work. I don't care if you can do it and make it look beautiful against Portland or Washington or Atlanta, etc. When you're playing a team that's got the personnel, like a Boston, like an OKC, like name a top contender here, teams with long, rangy wings, you have to really be on your game. And even then, it might not be enough. Like, you have to spam that hard pick and roll so Brunson can get the big in space. But again, that slows down your offense. It takes you away from Mike Brown's principles. He wants pace. He wants ball movement. He wants cuts. That's not what that is. You got to think about how is Cat going to be on the post. Josh Hart has to be the one making the constant entry hit to Cat on the post. If Hart's on the second side and someone else is making the entry to Cat, Cat can't see that backside helper loading up on him. But if Hart is making that entry, Cat can see the help coming from the top. It's much easier for him to read. When Hart's on the floor, he almost has to face up all the time. If Hart's weak side, he needs to make constant back cuts if Cat is on the strong side dunker in order to pull the helper off of Cat back to Hart. He needs to be taking and making those wide open looks that the bigs give him, which is a very hit or miss thing to rely on. But again, even if he does take them, it's no guarantee that these top defenses will start closing to him, which opens up his driving kick game. That's the idea of it, but we've seen head coaches like Joe Mazzulla not give a damn and keep the big on him. Even if he's knocking down shots, taking shots, just going to keep playing the same kind of coverage. Also, since you're not getting the benefits of Cat at the 5 on offense, you have to damn well hope that if Hart's out there, Cat is locked in at the 5 on defense. Because Hart's not Mitch. The difference is, yes, if you play Mitch with Cat, it's also the same spacing issues and matchup issues, but at least Cat's allowed to play the 4 on the defensive end because Mitch is out there. Hart, with Cat. Cat's at the 4 on offense and at the 5 on defense. It's the worst case scenario. So, to be honest, when Hart's alongside the first unit, they just have to play fast. You know, they have to hope, like they have to play full court. They have to run in transition. Because if they're not running in transition in those lineups, you're allowing the defense to set up their cross matches. Right? But when they are in transition, you've seen it. Hart's really good at hitting Towns on those trail threes that he loves to take, and he's very good at usually. But it's easier said than done. You can't always run in transition. It's not a sustainable style of play. And again, your defense in those Hart with the first unit lineups is simply not good enough to get those transition looks consistently. So it's just, again, if he's starting, you have to deal with so much, right? You're getting those turnovers when Cat's in post up. You're not getting the switches you want, the matchups you want. The big's going to roam. He's going to pre-rotate off of Hart in help, either to the action up top or at the basket. It's just not, like, your prioritization should be, how do we optimize our highest paid player? And that's kind of the opposite of that. Now, there is, like, I don't want just want to make this a negative, because there is such a good fit for Hart somewhere else on this roster, in this rotation, and I want to talk about that when we get back from our break. Stay with us. We'll talk about it.
Want more BD4? Subscribe to our YouTube channel and never miss an episode. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and share with your fellow fans. Don't forget to ring that bell so you're always the first to know when a new video drops.
You know, we've brought this up before, the idea of the Knicks doubling down on non-spacing, right? You can do Hart and Mitch. I don't like when it's Hart with Mitch a lot, but I would, you know, as weird as it sounds, take Cat off, replace Cat with Mitch, and you've got Hart and Mitch together. That's actually a second unit that's much more balanced. Clarkson, Shamet, Hart, Mitch, you don't have the big depth, in my opinion, to start both of your bigs, because Yabusele, unfortunately, isn't it. He's not it. So I that's one of the reasons I don't like to start Mitch. But you don't have the wing depth to start all of your wings. You know, I think Hart and Mitch, if you're doubling down on two non-spacers, they're elite on the glass. They're great in transition. Tie those two things, obviously they tie together. And if you're worried about the spacing, again, it's not going to be for too long. Brunson will be back on the floor, you know, mid-second quarter, semi-early fourth quarter. And if there's anyone who can play with two non-spacers, it's Jalen Brunson, who's able to handle suboptimal spacing, right? It's not like Cat, who's not a good ball handler. Jalen Brunson makes a living creating buckets in a phone booth. And Cat and Mitch will still see some minutes together. So I do think playing Hart and Mitch with the second unit can work. It also allows both of them to punish second units, weaker players on other teams, right? I think that's a really good second unit to go to on a second unit that's currently very weak. You know, the Knicks have had to deal with a lot of underachieving this year, but I feel like putting two starting caliber players with that second unit just makes your rotation much more balanced. It makes it seem a lot deeper, even though it's the same core guys, but just being in different spots makes it deeper, right? Now, if you dive into the numbers, you know, the eye test says it. The numbers sort of back this all up too. And that's kind of what I want to wrap this episode up with. So we'll do that in just a minute when we get back from our final break here on the show.
Love BD4 but don't have the time to sit down and watch? Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the show, leave us a 5-star rating and a quick review. It helps us grow and keeps the conversation going.
Okay. Welcome back to the show here. Episode 975 of the podcast. Welcome to BD4. I appreciate you tuning in. So the metrics. We are going to dive into some of the metrics here with these lineups that kind of support these opinions. Now, I use Cleaning the Glass. It is a It's a website that's very good. It's very reliable. It filters out garbage time, and it uses a sample of lineups with 100 possessions or more, just so you have a real sample. And the lineup that has Josh Hart playing with the first unit, the metrics on it, very mediocre, and it's trending downward, but they're 30th percentile in defense, 119.5 points allowed per 100 possessions. Not good. 48th percentile in offense, 117.6 points scored per 100 possessions, so not fantastic. 37th percentile overall in net. So they're minus 1.9 point differential per 100 possessions. They're getting outscored by 2 points in those minutes. That's very mediocre, right? It's the most used lineup on the friggin' team. 301 possessions with that lineup leads the New York Knicks. It's also the 17th most used lineup in the 205-man lineups on that website. 17th used lineup. 17th most used lineup out of 200. That should not be the case with a lineup that's net rating is in the friggin' negatives. We were supposed to be going away from that very thing. It is very Tibbs-like. It's the same massive issue that I had a problem with last year, and it's the same issue. It's the same reason why I was okay with letting Tibbs go. Because I thought with Mike Brown that this would be something we lean into a lot more. And we saw it a lot at the beginning of the season. But again, it's been on a trend that's going in the opposite direction now, where it's not Deuce, but it's Hart with that starting lineup. And it just isn't working. Now you go over to the Deuce McBride lineup when Deuce is with the first unit. It's not amazing, but it's better. And it's a much smaller sample. 9th percentile in defense. Okay, so awful. 127.7 points allowed per 100. But it's 91st percentile in offense. 132.4 points scored per 100 possessions. 55th percentile net rating. So plus 4.8 points in differential. As far as usage, it's been used, that lineup, for 188 possessions this season. So it's 113 possessions less than that Hart lineup. 60% less usage. That's not good. You don't want that. It's just, it doesn't make sense to me how a lineup that passes the eye test and has pretty, it has better metrics, is used that much less. Now, it's not the Knicks' best lineup. There is actually a lineup out there that's, we'll call it a third option, an alternative, but it's sneakily becoming, if that's a word, sneakily, it's becoming kind of the new death lineup for this team in a good way. And that's the lineup that has Mitch out there with the starters, right? The cat at the 4 minutes, or the double big lineup that people call it. That lineup, where it's Brunson, Mikhail, OG, Cat, and Mitch, 77th percentile in defense, 108.7 rating, 53rd percentile in offense, 118.8 rating, and 72nd percentile in net rating, plus 10.1. Now the caveat, it's a very tiny sample. It's 101 possessions. Obviously, Mitch has been hurt this year. He doesn't play back-to-backs, but it's the lineup that can work, as we've seen it work, and it's the lineup that can be sustainable. Mitch, we've talked about him screening for, Cat at the 4 isn't the most optimal thing. We talked about that just now with Hart. Takes the big off him. But you can do good things out of it that get you the right matchups, and it gets you the offense you want. You can use Mitch to screen for Cat, pin downs, flex screens, double drags, horns. And Mitch, yes, while he is similar to Josh Hart and the fact that he's a non-shooter, he doesn't space the floor, can space the floor in a different way than a shooter does, though. Because he can create some spacing to a degree because of his tremendous offensive rebounding gravity when he's underneath the basket. He's such a fantastic offensive rebounder. He forces guys to crash, and that's going to open up some space. Mitch out there with Cat. You go to the defensive end. Obviously, like we mentioned, it puts Cat back at the 4 on that end too. So although he's downgraded to a 4 on offense, he's upgraded to a 4 on defense because he's not in pick and roll as much. So I just think all in all, with the Knicks in the spiral that they're in, with their season having gone downhill at this point, it's not beyond fixing, and they need to be open to trying anything besides the one lineup that has consistently been mediocre since the beginning of last season. That is so many possessions. It's over 2,000 by now. But yes, I still think the Deuce lineup is best for contenders when you get to the playoffs, just because in the playoffs, a lot of the game comes down to spacing and matchups. There's a ton of switching in the playoffs, and it just gives the Knicks that offensive identity that they thought they were going to have this year, where it's all about spacing and back cutting and Cat surveying for cutters, or he's attacking downhill the right matchups and shooting and all that stuff. It gives you that. But this is the one thing I think they need to try. Again, we could talk about all the off-court stuff, but they still have to play the game at the end of the day. And I think this is something they need to go out there with tomorrow night. I was so friggin' caught off guard by the fact that they didn't even change a damn thing in the second half of that Dallas game. They came out the gate with the same lineup. It was wild to me. So you just hope and pray that at least somebody can be in there to shake it up. Again, I'm not saying Josh Hart's a bum. Josh Hart's awesome. I just think he doesn't need to start, and I don't think he needs to play 35 minutes a night, whatever it's at. I just think there's a better role for him to be optimized. It's all about optimizing guys in the role that they need to be in. This is just my opinion. But again, as we just went over, some of the metrics say, hey, I might be making some sense here. So what do you think? I do appreciate you all tuning in. We are about 28 minutes into the show here. So we're probably going to wrap it up now. But I am going to go to bed. Or you know what? No, it's I got an hour before my bedtime. Going to watch some Sopranos. I've been rewatching that lately. It's been a minute since I had watched it. So I started watching it a couple days ago. It popped up on the algorithm when I turned my TV on. I'm like halfway through season 2 already. It's really good. You forget how good it is. So I'm going to do that. But that's it for this one. I appreciate you all tuning in as always. Change has to be made, and it has to be made yesterday, to be honest. So let's hope we get it tomorrow. That made no sense. See you later. Appreciate it. Hey guys, thank you for listening to BD4. Be sure to follow us on social media, subscribe to us on YouTube, and give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. We'll see you next time.